Title: The Haunting Road, Nighy's Drive from New York to Las Vegas. Part 1. The Departure. Nighy Thompson was no stranger to long drives. A seasoned traveler, he was used to endless highways and the lonely comfort of his car. But the drive from New York to Las Vegas was different. It wasn't just the distance, there was something about this journey that sent a chill down his spine. He left New York late in the evening, the city's skyscrapers casting long shadows as the sun dipped below the horizon. The streets were bustling, but Nighy felt detached, as though he were already leaving the world behind. His destination was Las Vegas, where a new business venture awaited. As a gambler and entrepreneur, Nighy had a lot riding on this trip, but the strange sense of unease had nothing to do with the high stakes. As he merged onto the highway, the world outside his car seemed to fade away. The city lights became distant memories, replaced by the cold darkness of the open road. The first few hours were uneventful, but Nighy couldn't shake the feeling that something or someone was watching him. Part 2. The First Encounter. By the time he reached Pennsylvania, the road had become eerily quiet. No cars in sight, just Nighy, the darkness, and the hum of his engine. He glanced at his GPS, which suddenly glitched, the screen flickering before it completely shut off. Cursing under his breath, Nighy pulled over to the side of the road. As he fumbled with the device, he heard a faint knock. He froze. It wasn't coming from the engine or the dashboard. It was coming from the back seat. Slowly, he turned around. His heart skipped a beat. The back seat was empty, but the air felt thick, heavy. His breath quickened. Maybe it was just his mind playing tricks on him. Shaking off the fear, he restarted the car and drove on, but the sense of being watched grew stronger with every mile. Part 3. The Phantom Highway. As Nighy crossed into Ohio, the road became even more desolate. The moon hung low, casting eerie shadows that danced across the pavement. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional rustle of the wind through the trees. And then he saw it up ahead in the distance. A figure standing in the middle of the road. Nighy slammed on the brakes, heart pounding in his chest. The figure didn't move. It just stood there, motionless, silhouetted by the moonlight. Nighy squinted, trying to make out any details, but the figure was too far away. He reached for his flashlight, hands trembling, and stepped out of the car. The air was colder than it should have been. As he approached the figure, he noticed something strange. It wasn't casting a shadow. He froze, realizing too late that the figure wasn't human. It vanished before his eyes, leaving nothing but the whisper of the wind and the suffocating darkness. Nighy rushed back to his car, heart racing, and sped off into the night, but the road felt different now. Twisted, endless. Part 4. The Motel. Exhausted and shaken, Nighy pulled into a small, run-down motel somewhere in Indiana. The neon sign flickered weakly, casting an unsettling glow on the peeling paint of the building. Inside, the air was musty, and the receptionist, a pale, gaunt man with hollow eyes, barely acknowledged him. His room was no better. The wallpaper was peeling, and the bed creaked ominously as he sat down. Nighy tried to shake off the feeling of dread, telling himself it was just a bad day, just exhaustion. But as he lay down to rest, the nightmares began. In his dreams, he was driving endlessly through a tunnel of darkness. No matter how fast he went, the figure from the road was always just ahead, waiting, watching. When he woke, drenched in sweat, he realized the nightmares weren't just in his head. There were footsteps echoing in the hallway outside his room. Part 5. The Desert. By the time Nighy reached the desert roads of Arizona, the haunting presence had become unbearable. Every reflection in his rearview mirror seemed wrong. The shadows didn't match his surroundings. The whispers in his ears grew louder. He stopped for gas at a lonely desert station, where the attendant, a grizzled old man, gave him a strange look. "You shouldn't be driving this road at night," the man warned, his voice low and gravelly. "Strange things happen out here. You're not alone on this road." Nighy didn't reply, just filled up his tank and left, the man's words echoing in his mind. As he drove deeper into the desert, the landscape became surreal, the road stretching out forever into the horizon. Part 6. The Disappearance. Somewhere between Arizona and Nevada, Nighy's car suddenly sputtered and died. He was stranded in the middle of nowhere, miles away from any sign of life. The silence was deafening. He got out, looking around, but there was nothing, just the endless desert and the cold, starless sky. And then, the figure appeared again. This time, it was closer. Too close. Nighy's breath caught in his throat as he realized it wasn't just a shadow or a trick of the light. It was real. The figure moved toward him slowly, deliberately, its face obscured by the darkness. Nighy backed away, his heart hammering in his chest, but there was nowhere to run. The figure whispered something unintelligible, its voice like sand scraping against stone. And then it was gone. Part 7. The Final Stretch. Nighy's car miraculously restarted, but the damage had already been done. The road to Las Vegas was a blur, the landscape shifting and warping around him. Every shadow seemed to move. Every sound felt like a warning. When he finally reached the neon lights of Las Vegas, Nighy was a changed man. The city's bright lights and bustling streets felt hollow, as though he were still trapped in the nightmare of the road. He checked into a hotel, but the nightmares followed him. No matter how far he had driven, Nighy knew the truth. Some roads are haunted, and no matter how fast you drive, you can never escape the darkness that follows.